time to review one of my favorite movies about accounting. It is Steve Martin's The Jerk. A quick synopsis for anyone who hasn't seen it. If I have to warn for spoilers in a 30-year-old comedy movie, okay, there's spoilers ahead. But I'll try to keep just the accounting spoilers in there. Steve Martin plays Navin Johnson, a guy trying to make it on his own in the world. He works at a gas station and accidentally invents one of the greatest inventions of his time, the Optigrab, improving glasses, and making him a millionaire in the process. But it all goes wrong when the invention turns out to make people go cross-eyed, and he loses all the money. But fortunately for him, his family wisely invested, which allows them to come in and save the day at the last minute. For folks who are considering a career in accounting, I want to show you how realistic it is in the movies. And also, for anyone who's in the field or studying for the CPA, this is just maybe something fun for you to do. Feel free to critique my accounting. Nobody's perfect. All right, I guess I'm just going to watch the movie now.
Where you going?
To the bathroom!
Gotta have a key.
Can I get one?
My key is for customers who buy gas.
Oh, I'm buying gas.
I don't see no car.
I just need enough for my lighter.
Oh, look at this. And my wife wanted me to stay home today. Look what I would have missed. A complete fill-up for a whole lighter, huh?
Hey, Mr. Hartunian, even small purchases can make a business work.
Get to work in there.
But sir, I don't work here.
Not even for $1.10 an hour?
Oh,
Take a look. No kitchen, no windows, no chairs, no tables. It's a masterpiece of understatement. I'll put a bed down here, get a bigger boat, I'll bring some sheets from the house. You'll be set for life.
gosh.
So one thing, Navin is working here. If he accepts this apartment, that becomes taxable income to him. When your employer is giving you something of value and not charging you for it, that counts as income, and you have to pay taxes on it.
How much is this gonna cost me?
Nothing. When you're rich and famous, you'll send me a postcard.
Postcard, huh? Okay.
Mr. Hartunian is saying that this is a deal, but that's not really a fair transaction. That's not what we would call an arm's length transaction. In an arm's length transaction, anybody off the street would get the same deal. This is not that type of deal because Mr. Hartunian is giving Navin special treatment. Because Navin's getting that special treatment, it doesn't count as a real arm's length transaction.
I couldn't afford this anyway.
We just want some gas, muchacho.
Okay, but it's Sunday. We gotta have a credit card.
Oh. And all the cash is locked up.
Oh, no, not locked up. We got a lot of cash. Just that the banks are closed, and I'm not allowed to have cash coming in or going out. Because I'm here all alone for the first time. I don't want anything to happen. And you know, you flash this kind of wad in front of some people, they'll kill you for it.
Yeah.
So we gotta have a credit card.
Back when this movie took place, businesses couldn't deposit their money on Sundays because the banks were all closed. But we've solved this with two different solutions. The first solution is time deposit safes. Basically, the safe is only going to open at a specific time when the armored car gets there to take the money to the bank. Even if the manager puts the right code into the safe, it won't open for some type of delay. Usually it's about 30 minutes. So the thieves either have to wait and the cops can get there, or they just can't get the money that's in the safe. The other solution we've come up with is basically armored cars come every day to most larger businesses. A big box store like a Best Buy or Walmart is probably going to get at least one pickup a day. Sometimes they get even more than that to make sure that there's never too much cash in the building at one time, because that would make it a good target for thieves.
Master charge too.
Yeah, that's fine. We take master charge. You want to fill up, Mrs. Nussbaum?
Oh, I'm Mr. Nussbaum.
Yeah, that's his wife's card.
Wife's card, huh?
Yeah, I'll vouch for him.
Okay, as long as we got a voucher.
vamos a tener un ponazo verde. Vamos a hacer bien. You know what I think?
Stolen!
No, they got it.
This is another thing that's a little bit outdated, but used to really happen this way. You'd have to check to see if any of the credit cards people were running were stolen credit cards. Nowadays, computers do this for you automatically, and the employees don't even have to think about it. It just shows up as declined. But you used to have to look in a book to see if it was a stolen credit card. It's usually not the thieves that have to pay it, and it's usually not the card holder that has to pay it. Almost always it's the business that has to pay any losses due to the theft. And that's why businesses are generally really good about seeing if they're dealing with a stolen credit card, just like Navin's doing here.
I got it. Just send the police car over. Mrs. Nussbaum's credit card. I got the guys who stole it.
Generally, you wouldn't call the cops, you wouldn't try to be a hero. You would just decline the payment and say, hey, we can't accept this credit card. You'll have to take your business elsewhere.
How about you, sir? Step right up.
Hey, honey, let's see how good this guy is. What do I win?
Anything in this general area, right in here. Anything below the stereo and on this side of the bicentennial glasses. Anything between the ashtrays and the thimble. Anything in this 3 inches right in here in this area that includes the chiclets but not the erasers.
No, sir. Spawn, honey. He thought he had himself a room.
Frosty, still good at this.
Come on, Navin, you're doing fine.
No, I've already given away 8 pencils, 2 hula dolls, and an ashtray, and I've only taken in $15.
Navin, you have taken in $15 and given away 50 cents worth of crap, which gives us a net profit of $14.50. It's a profit deal.
Oh yeah, profits are important. You'd be surprised how many businesses forget this and need accountants to tell them. The idea behind business is your expenses have to be lower than your revenues. And that difference is your profit. That's what you get to keep in your pocket. The other reason I like this is because people sometimes forget the whole reason that they're in business is to make profit. They get so excited about doing the thing, like guessing people's weight, that they completely forget that making money is why we're all here. It sometimes takes an accountant to remind you that you want to make profit.
I've decided that tomorrow, when the time is right, I'm going to ask you to marry me. If that's okay with you, just don't say anything. You've made me very happy.
Now, this is not a business transaction, but in general, in contracts, you need both parties to agree. You can't just have it where silence equals acceptance, because if that was the case, we would all just be constantly turning down contracts all day long. Every business would be saying, we're in this new contract unless you disagree. It would be a nightmare.
Things couldn't be worse. I can only send you 49 cents this week. Oh, bless his heart.
That's a good boy.
As I've lost all my jobs. I've been eating well, though. The hospital gives out free meals of orange juice and cookies, and all I have to do is give them a pint of blood. I ate there all week, 3 times a day. Pint of blood? I decided to quit when I cut myself shaving and nothing came out but air.
Now, one thing I admire Navin for is that even though he's having a hard week and he's not making any money, he's still saving a portion of it. A lot of people lose track of this, and whenever things get rough, or whenever they spend too much or overextend or want something, they cut off savings into their retirement, and that is a huge, huge, huge mistake. You have to keep saving for retirement. Even little pieces help because you maintain that mindset and you maintain that growth mentality that you can continue building wealth even if you're not at the top of your game.
Navin, remember me?
No, but don't feel bad.
Fox! Stan Fox! Remember the gas station? Boy, you are one hard guy to find!
remember me. The glasses handle, look! Oh, yeah. My glasses handle.
Use the Optigrab. 50-50, just like we said. Right in here. I have your first check for 250 big ones. How much is it for?
250 big one. $250. That's 250 donuts. Endorsing and filling out of the deposit slip. $250,000.
This is a failure of accounting here. Everybody should know how much you're depositing because the bank could rip you off. If we didn't have an honest banker there, they could just say, here's your $250, pocket the remaining $249,750, and Navin would be none the wiser. It's very important to reconcile your checks to what you expect to be getting.
I will need 2 pieces of identification.
Ah, yes. I have my temporary driver's license and my astronaut application form. I didn't pass that, though. I failed everything but the date of birth. Didn't get the job.
Everything's in order?
Those forms of ID probably would not cut it nowadays. There's a lot of new laws out there that pertain to what information you need to open up a bank account, and those are just not something a bank would accept. There's 2 reasons that we have all these rules. The main one is to stop money laundering and make sure that criminal organizations can't hide deposits coming into the bank. The other reason is for taxes, to make sure that any large transactions get noted by the IRS and FBI. Any transaction above $10,000 requires something called a currency transaction report. That basically tells the bank that you are moving money around. A lot of car dealerships take advantage of this, and since I pay cash for cars, I come into this problem all the time. The car dealership says they need to run your credit when you buy a car, that it's required by law. This is half true. They need your social security number to file a currency transaction report. They need to tell the IRS and the FBI, this person had $10,000 that they transferred to us. They don't need to run a credit check, and they don't need to get you approved for a loan. That's just a little fib that a lot of car dealerships say. Of course, though, when this movie took place, that law hadn't passed yet. There's no such thing as a currency transaction report. The bank maybe would have accepted this. I don't know. I wasn't around in the 80s.
Money hasn't changed our lives that much. Our one little extravagance is a live-in butler and housekeeper.
Another check? Ha! Just as I thought. Look at that. Nearly $750,000.
Remember my dream of owning a big house on a hill? And how I used to wish for a living room with a plaster lion in it from Mexico? And remember how I used to chit-chat with Dad about always wanting a bathtub shaped like a clam? And an office with orange and white stripes? And remember how much I wanted an all-red billiard room with a giant stuffed camel? And how I wanted a disco room with my own disco dancers and a party room with fancy friends? And remember how much I wanted a big backyard with Grecian statues, S-shaped hedges, and 3 swimming pools? Well, I got that too.
This is something that hits really close to home when I used to work with high net worth individuals. And what I always thought was funny is nobody ever admitted to being rich. If you were making $1 million a month, you would never claim that you were rich. You would always say that you're in the middle class and that everything that you did was just a little extravagance. And it didn't matter what. The real life one that reminds me of this the most was a fella who every year would take a helicopter ski trip. and it always blew my mind. It was in Vail, and it cost about $5,000 a day for a helicopter to take him from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. And if you asked him about it, he would always play it off that everybody takes these trips all the time. It's super easy to have a $50,000 vacation. Don't worry about it. It's very common. So whatever lifestyle you get used to as a rich person, you tend to project and assume that everybody else lives the exact same way. This is way more realistic than you would think. Another thing to mention about how they're spending money is this is sometimes very true of folks that come across a lot of money. I had one client who had made millions of dollars selling some software that they developed. And that was going to be their retirement. They weren't going to make any more money for the rest of their lives. They were just going to live off of their earnings from selling the software. But they saw $5 million in the bank account and they felt that they had to spend it. So they bought stupid crap like this all the time. And eventually it got to the point where we said, hey, you're not rich anymore. You need to go do something else to make money again.
But I've got a lot to learn about handling my money and banks. You have to be careful. Poor Hobart. His dear wife Hester took some money out of her savings account and had to pay a substantial penalty for early withdrawal. Sorry about your wife, Hobart.
Federal regulations, sir.
IRS penalties are not quite this harsh. It is some of the harshest penalties that you see when it comes to retirement accounts. Taking out money too early or too late is where you get massive penalties. If you take it out too early, you have to pay taxes and a 10% penalty. But if you take it out too late, you have to pay a 50% penalty, which really, really hurts.
If your initial investment is $500 million and your apartments are up in March, you should have X amount of dollars rolling in by the end of this year.
Ah, X amount. That's very good, isn't it?
I want to include this because more people than you think don't think about the amounts when they're doing business proposals. Most people only think about the amounts that they actually have to pay once the invoice comes due. And a lot of those same people will agree to any amount and say, yes, yeah, that sounds about right. But then when the invoice comes due, they'll fight about it and they'll complain about it. And you as an accountant have to remind them, you're the one that made this deal. You're the one that agreed to this. I'm just paying the bills.
Carl Reiner has filed a class action suit against Mr. Johnson and his Optigrab. Here's what Mr. Reiner had to say at a press conference.
When Optigrab came out, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I bought a pair. And this is the result. This little handle is like a magnet. Your eyes are constantly drawn to it, and you end up cockeyed.
This is no big deal. It's a parking ticket to me. Only instead of $5, it's $10 million.
I don't care about losing all the money. It's losing all the stuff.
It's losing all this stuff. This is kind of funny because there's two types of people that I dealt with at a high net worth investing firm. The first type of person would spend all of their money on stuff like Navin did. The other type of person was just obsessed with having the biggest bank account, and generally it would be one or the other because those goals are fighting each other, right? The more stuff you buy, the lower your bank account is. And all the people that I dealt with cared about one or the other, but it was usually very important to them whichever one they actually chose.
This is America! We're going to receive a fair trial from an impartial jury.
Your Honor, we, the jury, find for the plaintiff.
I award to Mr. Reiner and the other 9,987,652 plaintiffs the full amount of the suit.
Court is adjourned.
A to the order of Mrs. Wilbur Stark. $1.09. Pay to the order of...
No. This is not at all how this would work. I guess technically you can make it happen this way, but doing it like this would be really, really dumb. The way that it works in the real world is the business pays money to a law firm, and then the law firm puts that money in the pocket of consumers. So it goes business, law firm, consumers. No way the owner of the business would be writing these checks personally. There's two reasons that it would never happen this way. First of all, it wouldn't be Navin making the payments, it would be the company making the payments, unless there was some really, really big mistake that he made, like gross negligence or fraud. The second problem is, physically, this is not at all how anyone would ever do this, even in the time that this took place. What you would do is you'd have a stamp that had all the same amounts on it. You'd have the $1.09, the signature that was required, and any other bank information like the account number, routing number, and it would stamp out all the checks, and the only thing that you would have to add is the payee and the address. Even the payee and address would definitely not be paid by the owner of the company. It would be somebody probably working at the law firm filling this out and sending the money out. It is pretty funny to watch him.
And then, that's all I need. The accurate, removing roles in the game,
So this is my favorite scene because this is also way more realistic than anybody gives it credit for. One of the things that I had to do at the high net worth investment firm is tell people if they were living inside of their means or if they had to cut their expenses. A lot of times people with high stress jobs wanted to retire early, and to do that they had to cut their expenses. I would talk to them and have conversations about you need to cut this, and this out of your life. At the beginning of those conversations, almost universally they would act like Navin and say, I don't need any of this stuff. I don't need to have it at all. And then when you start talking about it in details, they start adding things back. Now, it's not silly things like this. It's usually things like vacations, jewelry, cars, big events, things like birthday parties, anniversaries. They'd spend tens of thousands of dollars on it, and they'd say, that's the thing I can't live without. And I would always think, yeah, you totally can live without this. Nobody has this. It's just you.
Turns out Dad's a financial genius.
All I did was take the money you sent home and embarked on a periodic investment in a no-load mutual fund.
Prudent investing saves the day yet again. This is very accurate in terms of folks who are successful after coming into a lot of money very quickly. If you have the habit of saving it and building up that savings, then it can last you a very long time. Obviously, Navin's family here did not spend the money that he was sending back to them, and it allowed them to all retire very comfortably. I like that they also mentioned how they invested it, and this is very accurate. They're talking about a no-load mutual fund. In this context, a no-load mutual fund means you do not have to pay fees when you deposit the money or when you withdraw the money. There's two types of loads in investing. There's front-end load and back-end load. Front-end loaded funds mean you have to pay a certain percent when you put the money in. Back-end load means you have to pay the money when you take the investment out. Both of them are really, really detrimental to your long-term growth because you're either losing that money off the top or off the end. It actually doesn't matter which one, they both hurt you just as badly. The highest load that I've ever seen was 6%. I can't believe anybody would fall for it. The reason that loaded funds are still around is because brokers tend to make commissions off of these loaded funds. So they push investors into the loaded fund in order to get paid. That load pays the commission. The broker's happy, and most investors have no idea that they just paid a bunch of money out of their own pocket. Navin's family is a lot smarter than that. They didn't pay the load. There are other fees that do exist, and you have to keep an eye on them, but it seems like they're very savvy investors, so they got to keep most of that money and get a pretty decent return. Overall, very funny movie. The accounting is about 50-50 in it. I would give it probably a B-. We got really accurate in terms of folks who come into a lot of money and how they treat their money. The relationship between rich people and money is a lot more accurate in this movie than we'd care to imagine.
This is very good for a beginner.
They missed the mark on a couple of things like the class action suit.
It's unbelievable!
And how Navin gets into the deal. Overall, pretty good, B-. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, it really helps us out. And as a reward in advance, here's a clip that reminds me of busy season.
Honey, can't you see I'm drinking? No! Maybe you've hit bottom, but I haven't hit bottom yet! I got a ways to go!